What is up, you guys? I hope you guys are having a good start to the week. How's everybody doing today? Nice day to start the week. How is everybody? That light looks like it's flashing crazy right now on the camera. I wish it did not, but whatever. Push to hit the gym was fire. There you go. All right, guys. Cool. Welcome to the stream. If you guys haven't been here before, basically this whole stream is to go over my watch list, see what I'm liking for tomorrow and the rest of the week. And also, I do want to go over the trade that we took today, or trades that we took today on PLTR. We took two. One was red, one was green. Ended the day with a nice little profit there for the team. I know Nikita signaled about a 40% trade on QQQ. So great start to the week. But yeah, first trade we took on PLTR today. I took it on this 932 candle right here. We got in on the flip of this candle. We opened and we went red to green. We ended up selling back off on this candle, and I ended up stopping out right here, just right around 195.80 actually was where my stop loss was on this. And then we ended up taking it again here up at high of day, got filled right around 196.70, got out of this on this next push here at 937, I believe. Let me just fact check myself. Yep, got out here on the 937 candle on the break above high of day. It was just a little sketchy where we were at. We had a 1 minute trend lining up right here actually, where these previous two candles had rejected from. So after we got a nice break above, I just wanted to get out of this because it was a little bit sketchy, the price action we were seeing. Obviously, we ended up having a nice little push afterwards as well. But either way, nice trades on PLTR. I would say solid risk management overall. And also, anybody that's in here right now, if you're not in the floor, make sure you click that first link in the description if you want to trade with me and the team every single day. Have a nice Christmas special going on right now for you guys, so go ahead and check that out. But let's go ahead and get into the charting session here. We're going to go through and see what I'm liking for tomorrow. And after that, we're going to make the watch list. And after that, we're going to do a Q&A because I'm almost confident that we're going to have time left over. So let's see here real quick what the calendar is looking like for tomorrow. We have no earnings the whole entire week, so that's great for us. Market does close at 1 o'clock on Wednesday, so we have an early close. And yeah, as far as news goes for tomorrow, we have GDP pre-market, industrial production pre-market. We do have consumer confidence at 10 a.m. So 30 minutes into market open, we have consumer confidence and new home sales. Consumer confidence does move the market, so that's definitely something to be watching out for there. Now, let's go ahead and get into the important part here, which is, do we even have any setups for tomorrow? If I'm not talking for a second here, I'm just looking through the charts, and we probably don't have anything on those stocks. So let's see. AVGO does not look terrible here at, what is this, 347.50. I don't mind it at 347.50. I think we're probably going to have some better looking setups, but I do think above 347.50, this is where we're going to start picking up momentum to the upside again. So that would be the level I'm watching out for on AVGO. Let's see. Coin, not looking so hot. Okay, Google here. I actually did like this 310.77 level. I am not a fan though of this 30-minute trend at all. This only gives us about 30 cents a room. So I'm probably going to pass on that. Hood still looks good at 124.70. This was something else I had on watch for today, but we didn't end up getting to that level. So 124.70 I'm still a fan of. I would keep the same exact trade idea that I had from this morning on that. Meta, I am all good. Sorry, it's Microsoft. Microsoft, I'm all good. MSTR, nothing there for me. Low of day is about the only thing you can really look at on MSTR, and you're kind of going into a messy area here, so that's why I'm not loving that so much. MU, all-time highs. Yeah, I think MU all-time highs are getting a little worn out here. Not saying we can't make any more, but also it's just a little worn out in my opinion. I think our all-time high breaks are going to start getting weaker and weaker until we have a bit of a bigger pullback. So MU, I'm not really interested in the all-time high. Really all we did was wick at the end of day. Or actually, was that? Yeah, that was the last candle of the day. So end of day candle, we wicked a new all-time high. I do like trading all-time highs, but once they get to kind of how MU is right now, those breaks just continue getting weaker and weaker until we don't actually have a break or follow through anymore. So I don't want to be a part of that. My goal for this week is to be as risk-free as possible. Of course, there is always risk while you're trading, but not really taking a lot of risk this week. I'm just looking to get some base hits in before the holidays and call it good. Also, we're coming up on a new year here, so there's no reason to go crazy and overexert yourself and possibly, you know, give back a decent amount of profits before the end of the year if you're going too crazy with your sizing. So I would much prefer to play it safe. Let's see, QQQ, no. All right, we're not looking like we have a whole ton for tomorrow. The setups that we do have, though, I am a fan. I really like Hood. AVGO is cool. SMCI, I believe that I will be all good on this. Snow, I'm all right. Tesla, last thing here, really. Tesla, I don't even have anything on this. I don't have anything on this at all. We really only have 2 watches. But honestly, that's fine. If we have an opportunity for a cash day, I would much rather have that than trying to take a bunch of junk. But right now, the only things that I'm really a fan of is AVGO, which we are about $5 away from. And then Hood, we are also, what, $2 away? Actually, looks like a lot of these things are trying to take a turn back to the downside here, but we just really don't have any solid downside setups yet. But yeah. Let's go ahead and see here. So AVGO, my chart's a little messy. I'm going to get rid of these. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. So AVGO, I'm going to be watching 347.50. Let's see. AVGO, looking at the 347. Oh, I just realized that's behind my face. My bad, guys. Looking at the 347.50 resistance for a break to the upside. Targeting a move to probably 350, actually. Let's see. Do we have anything between here and 350? No, we do not. Yeah, actually, 350 is a perfect target. 350 would be the next area that I would even be considering this to reject at. So targeting a move to the 350 break. Overall, I will be looking for momentum for my final target. As usual. But yeah, AVGO, we do have pretty clean room to 350. We do have a 30-minute bearish FEG here, but I'm not too worried about that. That's really why I like this as well. It's lining up perfectly with 350. So is the 1 hour. But yeah, that looks nice. If we get the setup, it's not really the quality of the setup that I'm concerned with. It's more of a matter of, are we going to see it or not? Because we are still kind of far away right now. But if we get the setup, if we get the momentum leading into this level that we even need for entry, 350 should be no problem at all. Like that should be a pretty easy one swift move right there. I have 346. It's only a $1 difference, but I see more volume there for AVGO. Got you. Okay. Yeah, the reason I like 347.50 though is because this area has been rejecting extremely aggressively, if you can't tell just by looking at the chart right here. So since we have been rejecting so aggressively there, I just want to make sure that we actually have the momentum we need in order to break out of this level instead of just reject one more time. So I don't really want to try and go for an early entry here. Now, you could look at this from two different perspectives. One of these perspectives is from a risk to reward standpoint. Getting an entry at 346, if we have something setting up there, is completely fine. But if I were to just be getting in at 346, just to be getting in at 346, the probability of this trade playing out in my favor, not seeing what happens between 346 and 347.50, is going to be a bit lower. And if we don't see what we need to see between 346 and 347.50, then that's where we just avoid the trade, right? So the only way I'm executing on this trade is if I see what I need to see. And I'm not going to know that until we are above 346. So yeah, that's a couple different ways to look at that. So obviously, whichever fits your trading style best, do as you please. But for me, I think I would rather wait and make sure that what I need to see is actually there before I just get in. Yeah, no problem. No problem. But yeah, really the only thing else I have here is Hood. Hood at 124.70. I'm literally just going to copy and paste the trade idea from today because it is exactly the same and nothing has changed here. So Hood, I'm going to be looking at this 124.70 resistance for entry. We did break and hold above a 1 hour wedge and we came back into it. So that doesn't mean that the setup is bad. It just means that we're going to have to get back above this again. But entry and target are still the same. Obviously, if we don't get the level, if we don't see the level, then we're not taking the trade, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, if we see this level, this is what I'm planning to do. 124.70 resistance for entry. Targeting a move to the next resistance here at 126.27. You guys can see that right there. Yeah, above that, we have a ton of room on the higher time frames. We've got room all the way up to like 133 on the higher time frames. So Hood is looking really nice. That was actually probably my second favorite this morning. We just didn't end up getting there. So yeah. All right, guys, that was a super short charting session. There's my major watch list for tomorrow. But yeah, we have about a half hour left here. So if you guys have questions for me, feel free to turn this into a Q&A. I will sit here and answer your questions for as long as you would like me to, or as long as you have questions for. And yeah. Other than that, I'm going to leave the watch list up there so you guys can screenshot it and use it to your advantage. I swear, sometimes I really think people take these charting sessions for granted and don't put these to actual use, because every single time, not saying that every single trade hits, but every single time at least something hits. And it usually hits pretty nicely. How about PLTR 192.36 as a hold level? Let's see. 192.36 as a hold level. So I don't really trade that way. However, I do think that this area between about 191.10 and 192 should be the area that we're probably going to end up creating a new base off of, so we can obviously continue this move to the upside. If we are going to hold and if we are going to continue, I think that that is probably the area that we're going to see it happen from. So really from 192.37 down to about 191.10 is the area I would be watching for PLTR to base out and possibly form a reversal back to the upside. I was charting the levels you plotted out too and noticed you targeted AVGO on Tuesday's resistance last week and Hood's Wednesday. Can you walk me through what your logic is on that? Let me see exactly what you're talking about. So AVGO, my target is here, sorry. AVGO, my target is 350. 350 is just a psychological level. There is also a bearish FVG that lines up there, which is technically, I'm putting air quotes on that, technically supposed to be a rejection area. Obviously, that's not always the case. It doesn't have to play out like that. But if we are going to reject somewhere between 347.50 and really all the way up to 363, that would be the area that I would expect it to happen from. So 350, it's a psychological level mixed with an actual technical level that should be a rejection area. Now, Hood is different. Hood is just because it's the next resistance here. When I'm making my targets for my trades, I'm almost always targeting either a psychological level, the next support or resistance that is past my entry level. So for an upside trade, I would be targeting the next resistance, and that is this right here at 126.27. Or some type of trend line. So if we have a trend that's lining up that's going to affect our trade or most likely affect our trade, that would be something I would use as a target as well. So my targets are always, like I said, psychological levels, next support or resistance, trend line, and I guess fair value gaps as well, because those are levels that I look at and I don't necessarily play them, but they are areas that I will keep in mind and say, hey, this is the end of a rejection area. This is where, if we are going to reject, this is technically where it's supposed to happen, right? So I don't trade them, but I do use them for targets. I always like to err on the side of being more cautious, because why wouldn't you be? I mean, the whole point of trading is to minimize your risk as much as possible and maximize your potential as much as possible. So anything that I can look at and say that this is a risk, I'm going to take that into account and put that into my plan. Right? That's where AVGO's target is coming from. It's not necessarily because I know that something has to happen there. It's that is an extra risk, especially at that level. So do I really need to hold past that level, or is that move enough? And on AVGO, that move is absolutely enough. Like, that's even half of that move or a quarter of that move is going to pay. So I don't need to be looking for more. And I can assure you that I'm not going to have a $2.50 stop loss on this. So my risk to reward is already there, right? My risk to reward is already solid. This is going to sound dumb, but can you explain what a psychological level is? I assume it's just a vision of how the stock will move. No, a psychological level are basically whole numbers. So 350, 351, 352, 353, like whole numbers. That's it. They're just psychological levels that people see that and say that's a big number or that's an important number, right? Now, the every dollar increment, yes, they are still technically psychological levels, and I will keep those in mind while I'm in a trade. And typically, you'll see me scale out at levels like that occasionally, just depending on how the stock is moving, depending how much I'm up currently at that point in time. Sorry, guys. But yeah, psychological levels are just whole numbers. And obviously, every $5 increment, every $10 increment, every $50, every $100, those are all big psychological levels. Obviously, the $1 increments are going to be a little less important than the fives. The fives are going to be a little less important than the tens. The tens are going to be a little bit less important than the 50s. 50s are going to be a little bit less important than the hundreds. So like, they're literally just levels that people look at and say that must be an important level because this is 350 or this is 400 or 500. You know, that's really all a psychological level is. There's nothing technical behind it, which is why it's a psychological level. Psychological levels are also where walls tend to be set up on level 2. Typically at $5, $10, $100 increments, you're going to see some type of wall set up at level 2. They don't always have to be set up at whole numbers or psychological levels. Sometimes they're set up randomly, but a lot of the times at those psychological levels, you will also have some type of wall on level 2. Yeah, no, it's not super technical, Nicole. That's literally why it is called a psychological level. It's more of like a, I don't want to say it's a superstition, but I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. No problem. No problem at all. Now that I'm not in school till January, I'm more keen to ask questions. There you go. There you go. Once you get out of there, you'll be asking questions all the time. All right, do we have any more questions about anything? Any of the setups I'm looking at, any of previous trades, anything you guys want me to cover at all? This is literally your hour to abuse your random questions. Abuse it. I would rather answer 100 questions that you guys might think are dumb questions than answer none for the rest of this 20 minutes here, unless you guys just want to sit here and look at my face for the next 20 minutes. So I would advise that you ask some questions, or otherwise it's just going to be this right here. This is all. You guys get to spend an extra 20 minutes of that right there. Do you look at volume profile? No, I do not. I never really have, to be honest with you. I think that it could be useful to a degree. I think what would be more useful than just volume profile would be bookmap. But honestly, I always keep it 100 with you guys. I'm not really as familiar with bookmap as I would need to be to actually make it useful. Like, I know it is a useful tool, but it's not something that I am advanced in. Like Nikita uses bookmap constantly. That's pretty much, I believe that's pretty much the majority of what he uses to read price action. Now, my thing that I use to read price action is level 2, which is why level 2 is so important to me. And that's a tool that I probably could live without, but I really wouldn't want to. Like, I would rather not have a chart than not have level 2. You use level 2 on TOS or IB? I have it on both, Mike. I have it on both. The only reason I have it on both is because for some reason I feel like both of my platforms lag randomly. So I want to see the one that's moving correctly. I have TOS's as kind of a failsafe. But yeah, honestly, like, I think what would be more useful than volume profile, like I said, is probably bookmap. But if I just went ahead and just threw bookmap up on my charts right now, it would actually be more of a hindrance to me than it would be helpful because it's not something I'm familiar with. Because I use TOS, but walls are hard to spot on it. Yeah, Mike. Level 2 on IB is awesome. I love it. I think IB has probably the best level 2 out of any platform. But yeah, I have TOS pulled up as well as a failsafe, and also it's just easier for recording. I guess I don't even have it in the recordings anymore. When you say level 2, are you talking about delta, gamma, theta, etc.? No, Nicole, I'm talking about this little handy dandy tool right here. Wait, what's up? Datsuya. Can you tell me your name, Datsuya, so I can say your name instead of just avoiding trying to pronounce whatever your tag is? On price action. Wait. Yeah, Nicole, we've done a couple of lessons on this. I do have, actually, if you just DM me on Discord, I'll just send you the video. You joined before I really fully optimized the onboarding process. So everybody that's new that's joining is getting these things when they, like, immediately when they join up. And I believe that everybody that's renewing should be getting them all as well. I believe I set it up that way. But either way, Nicole, you would not have access to it yet. But if you want access to the video where I'm literally going over exactly how to use that, I will send it to you. Yeah, I can't manually add you to that list. So I think you will be added on renewal, but I can send it to you right now if you just shoot me a message. Oh, wait, you had a question. What was your question? Oh, can you go deeper on sizing, how you calculate it depending on what contracts and how a stock moves? Yes, absolutely. Wait, hold up. Oh, that's Saki. All right. Okay. All right, yeah. Can you go deeper on sizing, how you calculate it depending on what contracts and how a stock moves? So the way that I'm calculating my sizing, I am typically calculating my sizing based off of how much I'm willing to risk on a trade. Now, I do trade with relatively similar position sizing all the time. And I do actually recommend that still for small accounts. If you hear me talk about growing a small account and then you hear me talk about exactly how I trade right now, it might sound a little contradicting, but I would still recommend keeping as close to exactly the same sizing as possible while you're growing a small account, up until you get to the point where you can start using sizing to your advantage. But I'm just going to explain what I do now. And what I do now is I will be sizing in my positions according to how much I'm willing to risk on that trade. So let's say I know a trade is going to have a stop loss. Let's say that stop loss is a wider one. Let's say it has to be about a 20% stop loss for where my stop actually needs to be on the stock. All right. Now, if you are looking at that and you know about this much room, right? We have, let's say, $1 a room. And in that dollar of room, contracts are going to move about 20%. Okay. I know I'm going to have to give the stock $1 a room. I know the stop is probably going to end up being around 20%. So if I'm willing to risk, let's say $200 on that trade, that means my maximum position sizing can be $1,000, right? Now, let's say I'm willing to risk 2K on that trade. That means my max position sizing can be $10,000, right? Really, all you have to do is be familiar with your stocks, Saki. And I would imagine that you probably are, because you've been in here for a hot minute and we've been trading the same stocks over and over and over again for over a year now in the Discord. So you know roughly how Tesla moves. You know roughly how Nvidia moves. Obviously, everything's going to move a little bit different all the time, right? But you can still be familiar with how a stock moves and how those contracts on that stock moves as well. So let's say Tesla on a Friday. That's a perfect example. About $1 move on Tesla on a Friday is going to be right around 20%, if not more. So if I know that my target is somewhere up here, right? Let's say my target is right here, and this right here is $1. All right, boom, right here. That is $1. What can my maximum stop loss be in order for this trade to make sense? Well, I don't take any trades that are less than a 1-to-1 risk to reward, which means if my minimum target is $1, that means my maximum stop loss this mouse, I can't stand this thing. Come on. Just has to do something to mess up the thought process here. You guys might be stuck with me forever because I won't be able to end the stream. Bro, really? I've changed batteries on this thing like 5 times in the last week. That is crazy work. I don't blame you, Nicole. All right, whatever. We're turning it off and we're going to turn it back on and hope that works. The light is up. There we go. All right, cool. Sorry. Minimum target is $1. Let's get back to square one here. Minimum target is $1. I only take trades that are at least a 1-to-1 risk to reward. Okay? Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. So if my minimum target is $1, that means my maximum stop loss is also $1. All right? And in that dollar move, if I expect those contracts to move about 20%, then that means I want to figure out how much am I willing to risk on this trade. Sometimes you are willing to risk more than others, but let's just use the example that I just used. Let's say I'm willing to risk 2K on this trade. I know contracts are going to be moving right about 20%, which means that my max position size can be 10K. All right, it's pretty simple, actually. And you can do the same thing with smaller numbers. If you're willing to risk $200, max position size is 1,000. If you're willing to risk $100, max position size is 500. All right. And the way that I look at everything, I'm not a pessimistic person, but I look at everything from a worst case scenario perspective, because the moment you start inflating the numbers in your head is the moment that everything goes wrong. All right. So if you're trying to just give yourself happy feelings and happy thoughts and say, you know, well, maybe contracts won't move 20%. Maybe they're probably only going to move 15. Well, maybe they might only move 10. Like, I would rather just overshoot and say that contracts are probably going to move 20%. So when I hit my stop loss, I'm either losing what I expected to within a couple $100 of what I expected to, or I'm losing way less because contracts moved way less than I expected them to, right? That's the way that I like to think. I would rather think on the safer side rather than the how much money can I make side. That's the part that crushes people, actually. The part that crushes people in the market is they're thinking, how much money can I make versus how much money am I risking? How much do I care to risk? How much am I comfortable risking, right? That's the problem with actually not just trading. That's the problem with everything. Everything is how much money can I make, not how much am I risking. Is it better to buy, sorry. Nah, Nicole, if my mouse died in the middle of a trade, I'd be fine. I can just do it from my phone. Is it better to buy one contract worth 500 in the money or two contracts worth 500 out of the money? So my thoughts on contracts. In the money, you don't really have to worry about in the money unless you're playing something like SPY or QQQ. SPY or QQQ, I almost always am trading in the money. I rarely ever go out of the money on SPY or QQQ. But on everything else, I'm trying to trade close to at the money, which is just one strike out of in the money, right? So right now, if we're looking at AVGO contracts right here, 340 calls are in the money, 342.50s are out of the money, or well, they are at the money. I would probably be looking at the 345s. And the reason for that is because I typically only trade the $5 increments on contracts because they typically have more volume. So yeah, it would either be the 345s or the 350s. On Monday, 350s are fine. Sorry. I don't know what is up with me right now. I keep like halfway hiccuping and then I don't. But yeah, on a Monday and Tuesday, 345s are great. Their 345s are going to be good all week long. Or, you know, your first $5 increment is going to be fine all week long. But on a Monday or Tuesday, 350s are fine. I probably wouldn't take the 350s tomorrow, though, personally, just because Wednesday is kind of like a half day on a Friday, and then we have Friday again a day and a half later. It's just, I don't know. Weeks like this are a little weird, so I try and stay closer to at the money, just because I don't want contracts to be losing value quicker than they typically are. But yeah, I'll typically stick to the $5 increments. I try and go as close to at the money as possible. And the reason for that is because these contracts are going to hold value better. They typically have more volume. They're going to, like I said, hold value better. They're going to be safer for you. They're going to have better spreads. And yeah, so I would say one contract worth 500 at the money versus two contracts worth 500 out of the money, I would probably go with the one at the money. It doesn't have to be in the money, but at the money. Now, even then, your question right there, I would say, is a little bit closer to the side of it actually doesn't matter, one or two. Now, if you're changing that question a little bit to should I buy one contract worth $500 or should I buy 10 contracts worth $500? If you're trying to do that, you're going to be going so far out of the money that these contracts, their spreads are going to be ridiculous percentages. The volume might still be okay, but they're going to lose value like crazy. They're not going to gain value as quickly. So what you asked right there, I would say it actually probably doesn't matter except for on Thursdays and Fridays. But if it's one worth 500 or 10 worth 500, that means you're going so far out that it's like these contracts are literally just gambling contracts. Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, it depends on your account sizing too. You just reset your account to 1K, right? Or no, that was Seth. That was Seth, my bad. Yeah. I was gonna say at 1K, this is where that decision gets a little bit tough for me, right? Because I utilize scaling in my trading in pretty much every single trade that I take. I very rarely am I ever all in and then all out. I'm almost always all in on the buy, but I will also almost always scale out of those trades. Uh, so having the ability to scale out is super important for me because the reason that we can maximize some of these trades is because we've taken so much risk off the table that regardless of what happens, we're looking at a green trade. And then the whole rest of that position, we have the opportunity to make even more, right? So the ability to scale out is super important to me. So answering your exact question, I would actually probably say 2 contracts because then you do have the ability to scale out. But still, like I said, if it's 1 or 10, definitely not. But 1 or 2, your risk is going to be pretty much the same. I wanted to answer that very carefully because if I said what I just said without prefacing the 1 or 10, then I have a feeling people would be like, oh, I'm just going to go 50 strikes out of the money and buy 40 contracts, 50 contracts, and think that's a good idea when that's not the case. Then I would do 2 just to be able to, yes. But if you're not scaling out in your trades ever, then do the 1. Yep. Exactly, Saki. If let's say I never scaled out of my trades ever, it would just be the 1 in that scenario. But since I scale out of almost every single trade that I take, losing the ability to scale out would be it would still be doable. Everything would still be the same. It would just be a little bit more difficult to maximize the trades without also still having all of your risk out there. If you guys haven't noticed, I mean, I know the style of trading we do is extremely aggressive compared to any type of long-term investing. Like, it's obviously riskier, right? But I do like to stay on the side of as little risk as possible while we're doing this. I mean, you're in it for the longevity. You're not there to try and make everything in one day. You're here so you can be here for a long period of time. Yes, exactly, Saki. That's exactly what I'm saying. You can't do that if you just have 1 contract. So being able to have the ability to maximize every trade that you're taking without really having to risk anything is super nice. Because, I mean, how many trades, other than trades that we enter and it immediately rejects against us, like, how many trades do we get in that we are green and then we actually end up red? Like, that does not really happen because we're utilizing that scaling. Unless you just get really bad fills or you decide to not scale out with me. Like, that just doesn't really happen. All right, guys. Do we have any more questions before we wrap this up? What do I want for Christmas? Um, let's see. A pony. A mouse. Yeah, that's it, Saki. I want a mouse. What do I want for Christmas? I want all you guys in the floor to be making a bunch of money. That's what I want for Christmas. Other than that, we're good. I'm a man with very little needs. I just want to see everybody making a bunch of money. All right, guys. I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. I'll talk to you all first thing in the morning for pre-market review. Let's crush it tomorrow. And yeah, I was about to say end the holiday week strong. I really do feel like tomorrow is kind of the end of the week, though. Like, if we can just make it through tomorrow nicely, the pressure's pretty much off for the rest of the week. I'm not really expecting to take anything Wednesday, and I'm not really expecting to take anything Friday. I'll be there, obviously, but I don't need to take anything. We're good for the month of December already by a long shot. So, yeah. Anyways, I will see you guys all first thing in the morning. Once again, if you're not in the floor, click the link in the description and just join. Literally just join, and I'll see you there. But all right, guys.